Please tell us about yourself. What are your interests and hobbies?
I'm Sirana Mondo, Mbeng. I'm a special educator. I'm a holder of a bachelor degree and a master degree in special education. I've been teaching persons with exceptionalities for 5 years now. I teach resource and self-content. I'm married and we are blessed with 5 children. I take my students out for sporting activities, arts and craft. We do singing and dancing together, among others.
Are you involved in extracurricular activities that you could coach or supervise?
Yes, of course. I'm an assistant coach in tar ball. I also help to guide my students during arts and crafts.
Why did you decide to become a teacher, a special education teacher?
In my neighborhood, I saw how persons with exceptionalities were ill-treated by their parents, by their peers, and in the community. And since there were no special educators around, I decided to go back to school, study to become certified, so that I can teach, I can advocate for these students, and equally help them to build up their self-esteem and to become socially acceptable in the society. And ever since then, I've never looked back.
Are you currently employed?
Yes, I'm currently employed as a special educator, a resource teacher, and a self-contained teacher.
How many hours per day do you teach and how many days per week?
I teach 8 hours per day, and in between, I have a planning period of 30 minutes. I teach in 2 schools and 5 days per week.
Briefly describe your teaching experience. What special education subjects have you taught and at what grade level?
I started as a mainstream teacher, teaching grade 4 and 5. Since I was not certified, I embarked for a degree program. Alongside teaching, I started thereafter as a resource and a self-contained teacher, teaching secondary and high school students.
Briefly describe other work experiences you have had besides teaching.
I worked as a volunteer in a local clinic around our neighborhood, where I acted as a transcriptionist. I equally worked during my spare time, teaching my students keyboarding, arts and craft, basket weaving, among other things.
Have you ever worked in the United States? If so, when, where, and why?
I've never worked in the United States.
What do you hope to be doing professionally 5 years from now?
I love my job. I love teaching. I will continue to teach persons with exceptionality, for it gives me the joy to change someone's life and bring a smile into the person, making a difference in their lives.
If I were to talk to several of your colleagues, how would they describe your personality?
I think they will describe my personality as someone who is sociable, someone who is hardworking, and someone who puts others first before herself.
What would your students say about you?
I think my students will say that I am like their mother away from home. Reason being that when they come to my class, I give them love. I give them that warmness that they so needed. Because when they go out there, they are rejected by their peers, they are rejected by their parents, they are rejected by the society. But when they come to my class, I give them that warmth, that love, that care that a mother could give to their children.
How do you prepare to teach your lesson?
Depending on what you are teaching, be it resource or self-contained. If it is resource, you go back to the mainstream teachers classroom, you adopt your teaching program following the mainstream teacher lesson plan. You come now to your own class, you break it either into segments or you put it in audio, in video. You bring in your working tools that you work with your students that could help these persons with exceptionality easily adapt, easily assimilate what you are teaching. You start with the most lighter material. That is, you divide your material into segments from the simple to the complex. You bring pictures, graph, real life object to help your student understand your material.
What would your lesson plans include?
Generally, your lesson plan should include the class you are teaching, the age range of your students, the material you are about to teach the student, and this you put it in an orderly manner. You come to think of it, the class environment, the class size, the number of people you have in your class. For example, if you have a class of 6 kids, you know we are dealing with persons with exceptionalities. You put this student in mixed set. You can put a boy and a girl together. You put a most smart one with this weaker one together. You put them in pairs, so I say. This encourage socialization, and this will also help the slower ones to gain from their peers, the ones that are more smarter and sharper.
Think about a class that you have taught recently. Talk about 2 of the teaching strategies or methods that you used.
In a self-contained classroom, a student finds it difficult to add and to subtract. What I simply did, I did a presentation method and direct instruction. I present fruits to this child, oranges. I asked this child to feel it. I asked this child to taste it. All of this to warm the student up, to make the child feel very free in a relaxed atmosphere. Then I asked this child, "What is this?" The child responded, "Oranges." Now, pick an orange and put inside a basket. The child did. The child picked an orange and put into a basket. Before that, there were 2 baskets. And I've earlier said, this child finds it difficult to add and subtract. I did presentation method where I brought oranges and asked the child to taste it. If the child could give me the taste of the orange, and equally to feel it, to see how that oranges looks like. And now I asked the child to pick an orange and put in a basket, which that child did, and asked the child to pick an orange again and put in the other basket. There, I asked the child, "How many baskets do you have in front of you?" Now this child was very relaxed. The child could easily tell me that there are 2 baskets. "How many oranges do you have in those baskets?" The child could then equally explain to me 1 orange in the other hand or 2 oranges in the other hand. And here again, I asked this child, if I remove 1 of the oranges from this basket and put in the other basket, what becomes of this other basket? The child explained.
What methods do you use to grade or evaluate your students' progress?
I use formative or summative assessment. I assess them orally. I assess them through quizzes. I ask them questions orally. They give me oral response. And I equally ask them questions that they had to write on their books, or I give them assignment, take-home assignment, that they have to respond to my question. I give them quiz at the end of the week or at the end of the term.
If you use technology in your teaching, describe how you use it. Specifically, discuss your experience using a smart board and ways that you incorporate it into your lesson.
To begin with, in my country, Cameroon, we don't have smart board. We use chalkboard. And talking of technology, I take my students to the multimedia center where I give little assignments to my students. I can ask them to do maybe drawing with the computer, or I can ask them to chat with their peers in class. We use sand. In the course of playing with that sand, the children will write maybe numbers, maybe letters of alphabet, or even draw their friends on the sand.
If you have students who are noisy and non-attentive, share with us 2 ways you get them to be quiet and concentrate.
As a special educator, I know that my students will hardly make unproductive noise in class. Nevertheless, when my students make noise in class, what I do to begin with, the very first day I enter my classroom, I set rules together with my students. We set rules, regulation, and we set punishment accompanying those rules for any defaulters.
Describe the most difficult problem you've had to deal with as a teacher, and how did you solve this problem?
The most difficult problem I had to deal with in my class as a teacher is when I had a child with social problems. This child had psychosocial problems. When this child comes to class, the child is so happy, so relaxed. But once classes are over, this child is so depressed because the child does not want to go back home. I had to do some inquiries just to find out that the parent's child has not yet accepted the child's disability. The child feels depressed in their house, and so when the child is in school, the child feels the warmth around the school environment. The child is so happy. So I had to solve this problem by time and again paying visit to this student's family home with permission from my school authority, counseling the parents, talking to them to learn to accept their child, knowing that that child has just a disability but not inability. Doing this for several times, the parents came to terms with their child's situation, accepted the child, and there was love in their home.
Give one example to show that you are a flexible person and that you can make changes to your teaching and methods if that is necessary.
As a special educator whom I am, teaching resource and self-contained, I think that alone makes you a flexible person. Because as a resource teacher, you come across many subjects, persons with different emotional problems which you have to deal with. For example, you meet a situation that a child cannot handle a mathematical problem, you handle it. A child cannot handle a biological problem, you handle it. I think that is some sort of flexibility. And as a self-contained teacher, you meet a child who cannot even brush his mouth, a child who cannot do simple toiletry, a child with maybe learning disability, reading disability, all of that. You try to move from one sort of problem or situation to the other. All of that, I think it makes you a flexible teacher.
Is there anything you would like to add about your qualifications that we may not be aware of?
I think I would like to say here that I am a certified secretary, a computer secretary, computer literate. I do teach students keyboarding. I do take students for computer classes. And equally, I do arts and craft. needlework. That is not in my present teaching field, as I could say.
Have you spoken to your family about going to the United States to teach? Is there anything such as a family member that might object to your leaving home? Are you aware that your family members may not join you here until approximately 4 to 6 weeks after your arrival?
Yes, I've spoken to my family members about my leaving home. Everybody is okay about it, and I'm equally aware that they might only join me after 4 to 6 weeks.
Do you understand and accept that phases is a 3-year program, and after 3 years you must return to your home country? Do you agree to this?
Yes, I do agree. I must return to my country after 3 years.